Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming this evening. We're doing an interview tonight with Nishi Whiteley. Nishi is a cannabis educator, author, and all-around expert on all things cannabis. She wrote an incredible book. If you want to know anything about cannabis, cannabinoids, even recipes for cooking with cannabis, you should get this book, Chronic Relief. It's in the background here, and I'll put a link in the chat when she's answering one of the questions. I'll put a link in the chat for where to order the book. Welcome, Nishi. Thank you so much. And please tell us the story of how you got into this and what was going on with your mother and what caused you to write the book.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Well, my mom had lung cancer, and at the end of her battle with lung cancer, she utilized cannabis, and we were truly blown away by what it did for her that the pharmaceuticals could not. And, oftentimes at the end of a person's life with a chronic ailment, they are not conscious, or they're in so much pain that they have to take a large amount of drugs. That means that they just simply aren't present with their loved ones. And while I don't want to give the impression that my mom was having a super easy time, it's not necessarily true, but the last 3 weeks of her life, she was able to be fully present and to engage with us and to receive the parade of people that came to pay their respects. And that's an incredible gift, not only for her, but for everyone who loved her. And I was really blown away by what it did for her. It addressed the nausea, the vomiting, the pain, agitation, and the pharmaceuticals just could not touch these things. And it made me wonder, why is cannabis illegal? Because everything that I'm seeing is a net positive, and there weren't any real drawbacks that we could notice. And so that led me down this 5-year deep dive into the science about cannabis. And I had to learn a whole new language. I had to learn how to read medical journals and clinical trial results and things like that. And the net result was this book, Chronic Relief Guide to Cannabis for the Terminally and Chronically Ill. And my hope with the book is that it would help bridge the gap between this incredible sea of science, peer-reviewed science that exists, and safe, practical application. And at the time of the writing, I was living in Texas, and you didn't really say the word cannabis. Things were very different. And so for a while, it was a bit of a hush-hush project. It has been a true labor of love, and literally took me five years to write. And the last 2.5 of that, it was really my full-time job. So
it's such a solid book. I ordered it, and I worked in the cannabis industry in Southern California for a while as a consultant. And there is so much misinformation out there. And even if you're in a legal state, you walk into a dispensary and the bud tenders say, you want sativa or indica? That's what they know, and there's just so much more to it. There's more. Is it more than 100 cannabinoids? Is that correct?
Yes.
In cannabis. And so we know CBD. Some of us know CBN, which is good for sleeping. What did your mother take for the chronic pain that she had in the night? Was it different? Was it a whole? It must have been like a high dose.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
Yeah.
The answer to your question is I have no idea what she took. So I write about it. I've at the beginning of the book just a little bit, but I'm not sure. I can't remember how forward I was about it. But basically, I knew nothing about cannabis, absolutely nothing.
Amazing.
And frankly, thought that cannabis, I bought into all the propaganda about this is your brain on drugs. And so, I really was doing this as a mercy mission for my mom. And I certainly thought that cannabis should be available to people who needed the palliative care and assistance. But I wasn't in the camp of cannabis should be legal for all people. I have made that leap since then because I have significantly more information now than I did then. And so my sister and we called it dialing for dollars, which really it was dialing for cannabis. We had no idea how to get it. We didn't know what we should ask for or look for. We knew nothing. And so
she was in Texas at the time when she was done?
Yes.
Wow.
And so at the end of exhausting everyone in our Rolodex, our address book, whatever, I went and knocked on the door of a neighbor that I was fairly certain had access because I could smell smoke from his house, and knocked on his door and just, hey, how you doing? He was, happy to see me. We always talk about our vegetable gardens, and like, hey, my mom's dying and I need some cannabis. Could you help me out? And it was like, whoa, I'm not a drug dealer.
Oh,
okay. Well, that wasn't my question. I'm in real need. Can you help me? And so by the end of the day, I had what I needed, and I followed the instruction of some guy on YouTube that literally was in a lab coat. He wore a red handkerchief over his nose, and he had these dark glasses, a ball cap, and his hands were covered because he didn't want anyone to know his identity. And that was very common at that time, especially here. And so I made her butter, and it was probably ditchweed. It was probably terrible cannabis. And you know what? It worked. It did the job. And what it did for her is it controlled the nausea, the vomiting, the pain, and it gave her an appetite. It was great. And
even ditchweed. That's amazing. That's amazing. And ditchweed, for anybody who doesn't know, it's like the worst form that you could get. It's like what we all smoked in college, I guess, not me, but other people in college. So thank you. Jeannie Ralston's here, a founder of NextTribe. Jeannie Ralston, do you have a question for Nishi?
Well, I guess I'm just, I like how you said that. Not me. I didn't.
Not me.
Well, I did, but I didn't inhale. So
okay. All right. There you go.
No, I'm just amazed that there are so many. I like so many different kinds. I thought there were just the two kinds. And so I'm just interested in learning more about cannabis and the different varieties, and not necessarily just for a party, though I don't mind that, but mostly for sleep and just that's the kind of thing. But anyway, so
Jeannie's in New York now, where it's legal, so she could buy it if she wanted to in New York. So,
but it's been very slow to get set up. I mean,
the majority of the cannabis that's being sold currently in New York is not legal cannabis yet. It's on its way.
Yeah, that's what I keep asking people. And there's there's supposedly shops that you go to, and I went to one, well, I'll just tell you a funny story. I went to this place called the Museum of Sex, and they give you little gummies when you go there, and they work pretty well, but we're like, oh, maybe we can find some more that work. So I don't know. But we never found a shop. And then we kind of got embarrassed going, do you have any gummies that are good for sex?
Well, Nishi, it is a point, it's a Wild West. Even in a legal dispensary, you don't know what to buy.
Yeah.
Well, if I could back up, address one of your comments. Let's start from the standpoint so that we've got some leveling information so that everyone's on the same page. So there are over 400 different chemical components that could be present in your cannabis flower. So all cannabis products are made from cannabis flower. Some lower quality products may be made with leaf or other plant material, but let's just assume for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about cannabis flower.
And when you say flower, you're referring to that little thing that I'm pointing to right there.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes. Or it's also known as a bud. And we use that part of the plant because it has the highest density of trichomes. Trichomes are a gland that exist on all parts of the plant that are above ground, that it's where all the medicine it lives. And so we have the higher density of trichomes on the flowers, more so than on the leaves. And so this is really where we get the best medicine. And so we have multiple different chemical classes that appear in the plant. The most common is something called cannabinoids. And then we also have terpenes. And then there are flavonoids and other chemicals. But the ones that are most studied are cannabinoids and terpenes. Cannabinoids are things like THC, CBD, CBG, CBC, THCV, the alphabet soup of cannabis. And then we have terpenes, which are a class of chemicals that are commonly thought to give plants their smell. So when you peel an orange and you have that nice uplifting smell of the orange, or a lemon, or whatever, pineapple, mango, lavender, you take a walk in the forest and it smells nice. Well, these are terpenes, and there are over 20,000 different terpenes that exist in nature, and they are generally thought to be regarded as safe. GRAS is what the FDA calls that. So in American cannabis, there are probably 17 to 20 terpenes that are most common. And so terpenes have a lot to do with the way a certain variety makes you feel. So when you go into a dispensary, or you're trying to figure out which product is best for you, then you want to be looking at the combination of what cannabinoids are present and which terpenes are present. And these two things have synergy together. And so, right now, what has happened is that because cannabis has been prohibited federally, cannabis growers have been forced underground. And so it has really driven the percentage of THC, or the amount of THC that exists in the plant, sky high. And what we know from consumer research is that really people like cannabis and have the most pleasant experiences from more moderate THC amounts. And so when we talk about dosage, somebody who is new to cannabis should really be starting at the 2.5 milligrams of THC. If that doesn't do much for them, maybe 5. People who are experienced with cannabis, however, may prefer something in the 10 milligram range. Somebody who has been using cannabis for many years for many different reasons, I really prefer something in the 2.5 to 5 milligram range, because that allows me to communicate and be in full control of my body, but also to reduce my pain level, my inflammation, to separate myself from my very hectic work day and leave all my work back in my home office and go and enjoy a meal or music, or just sort of check out a little bit.
Like a glass of Chardonnay.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, there are so many different options when it comes to cannabis. And coming back to your comment, Jeannie, about sex, a lot, I would say pretty much almost any cultivar of cannabis has the potential to improve someone's sexual experience for the sole reason that cannabinoids are vasodilators. And when we increase the amount of blood and oxygen to the erogenous zones, we're going to have a lot more pleasure. And
What's a cultivar? Please define a cultivar.
cultivar variety, a lot of people say strain,
Mhm.
and it works. People know what you're talking about. There's a great debate between my business partner and our IP attorney about whether we should be calling it a strain. And our IP attorney argues, yes, you can call it a strain. And keep in mind, he happens to have a PhD in plant molecular biology and a master's in plant genetics. And then my business partner, who is a world-renowned cannabis scientist and a board-certified neurologist, he says that no, we should be using the term cultivar, chemovar, variety, anything other than strain.
Mhm.
Hopefully I've answered your question, and I kind of use those terms interchangeably.
Okay, now let's start. You were talking about doctors. Your partner's a neurosurgeon, neurologist. So, what do doctors really know about cannabis? I mean, how, I know you're educating guys. This is your mission now, to get more doctors and everyone in the medical field educated about cannabis, but it's not taught in medical schools, is it?
It's not in most medical schools. I will say that in the last 24 months, there has been a small shift. And so cannabis is not quite the dirty word that it used to be, but it's also not the topic of conversation and education that it really should be. So, some doctors know nothing. Some doctors are grossly misinformed and are drinking the prohibitionist Kool-Aid, which is really dangerous, in my opinion. And other doctors, there's everything in between. People who really know what they're talking about, have a deep understanding of the plant and how and why it works in the body. But
Marion has a question. Go ahead, Marion. Unmute yourself and ask.
So I'm curious about what else it might be good for. Is it good for healing osteoporosis?
Potentially, yes. Can I circle back around to that? I'd like to finish my.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
About
mean to interrupt. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
But if I could just finish, I think it's really important for this conversation for everybody who's here tonight and listening in the future to understand the reason that cannabis is such a safe, versatile, and effective medicine. And so, Marion, this will hopefully help answer your question in part. We all manufacture chemicals in our human body, which are like THC, CBD, just like cannabinoids. These are called endocannabinoids, or the cannabinoids within. And so I'm going to back up one more step, and these endocannabinoids are part of a larger system called the endocannabinoid system, ECS for short. Endocannabinoid system is a mouthful.
Which is like the lymphatic system. It's like your circulatory system. It's a system in the body that did they discover the endocannabinoid system, or has it always been there and they just,
Yeah, so
how long have they known about it?
Yes, the endocannabinoid system has always been there. It's always been part of human evolution. But it wasn't discovered really until the last 20 years. And
Wow.
so what we know about the endocannabinoid system is that it exists to bring the human body back into balance. So if there's life stress, an injury, an illness, then it's always going to bring you back into homeostasis. And so really controls eat, sleep, rest, relax. It is the one system in our body that is integrated into every single biological function in the human body. So it regulates, modulates pain, inflammation, memory, temperature regulation, reward, suckling in a newborn. So this system is integrated into every other system in the human body. And it is for this reason that cannabis is such a safe, versatile, and effective medicine. Now, to get to Marion, your question about what is it good for, it's good for more than what we really have time to talk about today, but I do want to kind of give just a couple of high level silos, if you will. So pain, inflammation, and aging are really big buckets, if you will. And so the components of the cannabis plant are incredibly potent anti-inflammatories. And when we think about chronic illness, what is it every chronic illness has in common? Inflammation. And many of them come with quite a bit of pain. And so cannabis is very good for that. And we're all aging, but the question is, are we aging gracefully? Are we aging at a rate that is appropriate? Or are we aging too fast because of high levels of oxidation within our body? And so cannabis really helps us manage all of those things. You know, my business partner and I formulate not only for over-the-counter products, medicinal products, health and wellness, as well as pharmaceutical products, all from the cannabis plant. And we actually were having a conversation today about a pain formula, anxiety formula, and a sleep formula that was previously on the market, and we're working to get it back on the market. And you know, these all have very low amounts of THC, but they do have THC in them. And the customer response that we've gotten from these three products are just extraordinary. And you think about it, do you know anybody that doesn't have to deal with, you know, a sleepless night or pain or anxiety? These are really serious issues in our culture. And, you know, there's this misconception that you have to get stoned to the bone to get some benefit. And that simply isn't true. And I would argue actually that small amounts of cannabis sometimes generate the very best rewards and benefits for people.
Did you see that story about that judge this past week? I think it was a judge in South Carolina. The woman was taking cannabis and I don't know, she got in some trouble or something. And she said, well, I was taking it for anxiety. And he said, no, take Xanax, you know, just don't take cannabis, just go to your Xanax. And we know all the side effects related to Xanax. Some people take it very well, but she wanted to take cannabis and he wouldn't let her under the terms of her probation or whatever it was. And so doctors don't know enough, judges don't know enough, police don't know enough. What's going on with, do you know anything about what's going on? Well, since we're in Texas, what's happening now in Texas? We have this Delta 9 and Delta 8 that people sell in the gas stations and different stores around here. And I've always told my friends, stay away from that stuff because it could be made in bathtubs or something. It's totally unregulated. It's not like in the regulated markets in California, Colorado, and the other places where they have rules around it.
So Delta 9 THC is what is coming from the plant. And you can actually buy products in Texas with phytocannabinoids, cannabinoids from the plant with Delta 9 in it, because that has come from a hemp plant. And the delineation between what is hemp and cannabis is arbitrary number. So under the Farm Bill, anything that has 0.3% or less THC in the plant is legal. And so what happens is that people will be able to take that hemp plant, and if you know what you're doing, then you can make a product such as a tincture, a gummy, a drink, whatever you're looking for, that will have 2.5 or 5 or 10 milligrams of THC. And that is currently legal because it came from a hemp plant. And so the legislature didn't really understand that when they passed their laws, which is good for us. Yay us. But Delta 8 also is present in the plant, but not in a high enough volume to be able to make it commercially viable to extract it. So all the Delta 8 that you see anywhere is being chemically derived. And what most people are doing, and Jeannie, you're right, it may be made in somebody's bathtub. What most people are doing is they are taking CBD and then using a chemical process to convert it. Well, at the point that you add chemicals to CBD, I would argue it's no longer a natural product. And because there is zero regulation on this, who knows what you're putting in your body when you buy a Delta 8 product. And so I would beg anybody that has bought something Delta 8, throw it away. It's not worth it. I mean, you're really gambling with your health, and maybe a little bit isn't going to hurt you this time, but could potentially have a cumulative effect, because the chemicals that people are using to make that aren't, they're not healthy or necessarily safe.
So stay away from Delta 8. Delta 9 may be okay. Better thing to do would be in a regulated market, or buying from somebody, I guess, who's growing it on their own in some other. Does anyone have a question? I don't want to hog the floor here. If anyone has a question, please.
Why can't you just let me fuck? You being weird.
Oh my God, really? I thought I muted this guy. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
You can kick them off. Kick them
I
off.
I just keep bothering you because you got some good
Okay,
pussy.
all right, God. How do I get?
Jeannie, do you know how to kick them off?
No, how do I do it?
Go to the 3 dots up there and the
Remove.
on the corner
Okay.
of this thing. And it
Okay, I removed. All right.
Oh my God, we had one time when we were Zoom bombed. It was awful. But
Yeah, this guy looked like he was on a Ring camera. That's pretty funny. Okay, does anybody have a question you'd like to unmute?
I have let you go. Did somebody else have a question?
Well, I can come back to your question about sex. I'm not sure that I finished what I was saying. So just so you know, there are certain varieties that are in fact much better to enhance sexual pleasure.
I'm writing it down.
I'm sorry, I can't give you any names, but I will tell you that there is a company, Foria, Foria, that makes pleasure products from cannabinoids, and they're great. They're great gifts. They're just great, and they're really well made with high quality ingredients.
Now, are they CBD?
They do have some that have CBD in them, yes.
So tell us about, like if people are curious about, there are a lot of CBD shops in Austin and in other states where cannabis isn't legal. Tell us about what's the story about CBD? Should we be using CBD if we're a little scared of using And CBD, as I understand, it has to have a little bit of THC in it in order for it to be active and to have any effect. Is that
Well,
wrong?
I don't want to say that it is wrong. It is sort of. So CBD is an incredible molecule, and it on its own can certainly help people with a wide variety of issues, inflammation, pain. Certainly would encourage anybody with cancer or who has had cancer before to have a CBD regimen, simply because it helps retard proliferation of cancer cells. But CBD is important. It is a wonderful molecule. It is better when it is taken in tandem with some amount of THC. When we take CBD and THC together, and this is true with pretty much any cannabinoid, there is a synergy that happens. And this is known as the entourage effect. And specific to CBD and THC, when taken together, they're going to be 4 times more effective than taken alone. CBD shops have popped up everywhere simply because it was the thing that was allowed. And people were, the people have been so much more quick to adapt and adopt cannabis as a wellness product than our government has. And so these shops were really born out of demand. And frankly, that's why Delta 8 is out on the market, is because people really want access to cannabis, and in certain markets, they just don't have it. And so they go for Delta 8, which they think is the next best thing. So that's why we have so many CBD shops, and it works.
For people who travel to California and Colorado and want to try something, are you willing to name a few good brands?
Sure. I wish mine was on the market so I could tell you about it.
Yeah.
But it's not quite yet.
Okay.
Well, I would say that more importantly than brands is that you want to go to a dispensary that is going to have information about cannabinoids and terpenes on the label. And that's going to help you more than anything. So, first of all, you should know, what kind of an experience are you wanting? Why are you using cannabis? What's the point? What's the purpose? And so the answer to that question really is going to drive what it is you're asking for. How long do you want to have this experience? If you're treating pain, then you probably want that to last you a long time. If you are looking to, let's say you're in Las Vegas and you just want to go enjoy a meal at a 5-star restaurant with your BFF group or, your favorite person, well, then that may be something else entirely. And so I think, it's important to know what it is you're wanting from the experience and to be able to articulate that to somebody that knows more than you do about the offering that's in front of you. And then let them guide you. And I think that's much better than going for a brand, because what is available in the shelves today may not be available tomorrow.
That's a good point. Marion, you had another question?
You're
You
on.
can, yeah, here, let me unmute yourself, Marion.
I wanted to go back to the osteoporosis question, and if these substances are good for healing osteoporosis or not.
You know, I would really need to go look up a couple of journal articles to address healing osteoporosis. But I will say that I do remember coming across a couple of articles that talk about how certain cannabinoids do stimulate bone growth. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head which ones they are, but
Could she go on PubMed and research it? If you go,
absolutely.
yeah.
PubMed is the absolute best place to go. You just
yeah, Marion, go on pubmed.org, I think is what it is, either pubmed.org or pubmed.com. It'll
Yeah.
have the abstracts of the studies on this. And this actually brings up an interesting question about research. So there are
So-
people who, go ahead, sorry.
Well,
You
I'll
found
just
something?
say that I'm checking on my book here. Can't really see, sorry, but bone stimulant is CBD and CBC, cannabichromine, which is kind of hard to find, but CBG and THCV. So CBG and CBD are probably the two that are going to be easiest for you to find. But I do encourage you to do what Jeannie was suggesting and go look on PubMed.
By the way, that's why this book is such a great reference manual too. I mean, if anybody wants to know the as I said on the promo, the 411 on cannabis, you know, she has spent years putting this book together, doing all this research. And, you know, a lot of people who are opposed to cannabis use say, oh, well, there's not enough research on it. Well, that's just not true. And, you know, and Israel is at the forefront, right? There's so much great research coming out of Israel. But now in the United States, there's more and more. So, and as more and more states legalize it, there are questions. Now, there are questions about use, you know, among teenagers. My mother lives in Colorado, and so she lost a ton of weight. So I got her on some gummies for her appetite because she lost her sense of smell. And her appetite came back, even though her sense of smell didn't come back, her appetite came back with these gummies. So they just address so many different things, but they, you know, being 82 or whatever she is, you know, she and her husband were a little worried about doing it, but she's a little more experimental than he is. So she tried it and it's worked for her. But I think a lot of people are still questioning, is this real? Is, you know, a bunch of people getting stoned out. There's nothing worse than having too much cannabis. It's scary to feel like you've got too much. That's why that low and slow approach is a good idea.
It is, but if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel like you've had too much, then have a glass of lemonade.
Oh, lemonade will come.
Yeah, that might help. Yeah,
Or just lie down and sleep.
exactly. You know, I've really seen cannabis do some amazing things. Just if I may tell you a quick story.
Yes.
For several years, I've done educational consultations with people with a wide variety of chronic illnesses. And one of them was a gentleman with multiple myeloma. And these patients die a pretty awful death. And so he had fluid on his lungs, and generally it takes about 8 weeks from the time they do the last fluid draw until that person perishes.
Mhm.
And this gentleman came to me for a consultation and just wanted to be comfortable while he waited to die. And I asked him, you know, are you open to a miracle if those things actually happen? He was like, well, yeah, sure, I'll give anything a try. And so he tried a regimen that was a very high dose of both THC and CBD. And he lived another 2.5 years.
Wow.
It ultimately took him off of hospice, and he and his wife got to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. They traveled, he made amends with his children, and everybody was like, what are you doing? We've never seen this happen before. And he was so scared of having his medicine taken away from him that he wouldn't tell anybody, and basically made his wife promise that she wouldn't tell until he passed, but that when he passed, she had instruction to tell everybody exactly what he had done. So
Well, that's just amazing. And I'm sure it's one of many,
I have
many
hundreds
stories like
of
that.
those. Yeah.
So you, in your practice as an author, speaker, expert on this, you will also do consultations with people if they're curious about it and they want to try
Yes,
something?
they're educational consultations.
Mhm.
I do not
You're not a
practice
doctor. Yeah.
medicine, but I do have a lot to teach, and have educated physician and medical audiences. One day I was on a plane. I was on a 3-hour plane ride, and I had a chief of gynecology sitting in the seat beside me at a very large and prestigious hospital in Atlanta. And we started talking, and I talked for 3 hours. Really, he asked questions. He was like, well, tell me more, tell me more. And so by the time we got off the flight, I felt like I had effectively changed his mind about cannabis. And he was like, okay, I've got homework now, and I'm going to PubMed. And I'm like, great.
Well, that's fantastic. So it's wonderful that there's someone out here like you. You don't look like a drug dealer. You look like a normal person who would go out there, and you're educated. You've educated yourself on it, and you've had your own practice with it. So I would think that people would feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about it. How would they reach you if they wanted to? I mean, this is probably for the end of the interview. We're not there yet, but if somebody wanted to do a consult with you, an educational consult, how would they reach you?
Yeah, the best way is through my email, Lane, Lane, at mychronicrelief.com, or through the website, mychronicrelief.com. We have a contact form. And so that's really the easiest way. I can also Google my name on, or look for me on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I do.
No, Jeannie. Okay, go.
I guess I maybe missed something, but you have your own line coming out, your own line of products, or what?
So my business partner is an exceptional formulator, and we had a line of products that we formulated for another business that were available for about a year. And the company to whom we license the product is taking their business in a different direction. And so they decided not to manufacture the product anymore. And their customers have been clamoring for more. And so we are working on trying to figure out, are we going to manufacture these products ourselves, or will we out-license the formulas to somebody else? And
are they like, do you direct them, like, for let's just say for
looks just like this.
But is it specific purposes, or what does it say?
Yeah, one's for pain, one's for anxiety, and one's for sleep.
Okay, and they're drops.
Mhm.
So
Yes,
all
ma'am.
drops, any gummies? Not the gummies.
We don't have no gummies, but it's something we're looking at, just because everybody wants a gummy, it seems.
And this is a really important point, interesting point about gummies and terpenes. My understanding is that very few of the gummies actually have the active terpenes in them because it cooks them out, right? And so you're getting a gummy, you're getting the effect of the THC, but the terpenes, talk about the terpenes for their value and in gummies and so forth, and how you can find the effects that you
So
want.
you're right, terpenes are difficult to include in a gummy. And they are much easier to include in a tincture. So in a gummy, it'll be super concentrated, and it just, tastes like cleaning fluid probably. And so it's difficult to get the right amount of terp in a gummy. Yeah.
And tell us the
Mhm.
different terpenes. So there's limonene, which kind of wakes you up because it's got kind of a lemony smell. There's pinene also, smells like a pine forest. I took a terpenes class. That's how I know this. And there's and the ones that make you
Linalool.
linalool, myrcene.
Calm.
Myrcene is the sleepy one, the calming one. So the terpenes have a lot of value. So as you're shopping and looking for these things, you want to look for the ones that have the terpene profile on the side. I mean, how do you
Right.
determine?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I hate to be self-promoting, but
No, go.
in the book somewhere, I happen to have, it would be on somewhere in the 50s, a chart. And so I keep trying to show you guys this chart, but the light.
Well, they'll have to buy the book and then they'll get the chart.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a very simple chart that kind of helps you understand, if you are trying to address a certain ailment, which one of the most common terpenes can help you do that. There is also an extraordinary amount of information on the internet. Leafly leafly.com happens to have a really good terpene diagram. You can Google terpene images, but these terpenes have different flavors and different effects. And so just like Gina was saying, if you're looking for something that's going to help you be alert and creative, and you're looking for something during the day, you're probably going to choose something with alpha pinene and limonene in it. If you are needing something that's really potent pain reliever during the day, but you don't want to be stoned, so to speak, you may choose something that's high in CBG and CBD, which can be psychoactive because they're crossing the blood-brain barrier, but they're not going to give you that feeling of being floaty or stoned. And so you might want those two cannabinoids combined with beta caryophyllene, which is kind of peppery in flavor. Beta caryophyllene is very potent when it comes to addressing pain. Maybe you are looking for something at night. You've had a very stressful day and you need to be able to both relax and calm down and start to get ready to prepare the mind and the body for sleep. Well, then linalool would be a great choice. And if you're finding you can't fall asleep easily, then linalool and myrcene combined with THC and a little bit of CBD could really give you a nice night's sleep.
And CBN. CBN is what I take.
So
Am I wrong? Ooh, tell me.
We're actually pulling the CBN out of our sleep.
Wow, tell me why. Wow.
There just isn't enough evidence that really supports that CBN helps sleep.
Wow. Okay. What an
It's
education.
just, people are talking about it, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, CBN works for sleep. And we're like, does it?
Does it?
So,
Oh, interesting.
the evidence doesn't support us using it in the formula.
Tell us about your partner. I know he's very respected in the cannabis industry. Tell us about him and kind of what the work you're doing in your company.
Well, if
Tell us his name first.
if he were here, I would embarrass him terribly.
Yeah.
He would blush. He is a very
What's his name?
beautiful human, Dr. Ethan Russo.
Ethan Russo. Okay.
He is a board certified neurologist. And if you have any interest in really digging deep into cannabis, you'd be well served to visit the library page, or his library, which is ethanrusso.org. And all of the scientific writings that he is allowed to share are there. And it's a substantive collection of work. And so Ethan, as I said, is a board certified neurologist. He spent, I guess, 16 years total working with GW Pharmaceuticals. 11 of those were as a full-time employee, serving as the senior medical advisor and medical monitor on their clinical trials. GW Pharmaceuticals is the real pioneer in pharmaceutical cannabinoid-based drugs. And GW Pharmaceuticals they were the first company to get a product through pharmaceutical approval. So Sativex was their first drug, and then they have Epidiolex, which is approved in the US. Sadly, Sativex is not approved in the US, but I think the last number I heard was like it's approved in something like 30 countries, including Europe, which has as rigorous or more so, more rigorous standards than the US. So they're really the pioneer in the space. And Ethan has worked on over 24, maybe it's 25 clinical trials on cannabinoid based medicines, which there's just nobody else out there that really has that kind of resume.
And speaking of that and thinking of GW, so they got a patent, right, on certain formulations of using certain cannabinoids. And the US, if anybody has any doubt that this stuff works, the US government has patents on certain applications of cannabis. Can you just fill us in on that quickly?
Neuroprotective properties.
Exactly, protects the brain.
Keep
How
in
about that?
mind, this is the same government that put out the campaign, this is your brain on drugs, showing fried eggs. So, the federal government has put out an incredible amount of misinformation. And we've actually known for a very long time that cannabis really poses no real risk to the public. Cannabis was placed on the Schedule I in 1971, and it was thanks to Nixon, who knew that it posed no real risk to the general public.
Adults, though. I mean, we should say that for teenagers and the forming brain, it can be harmful to teenagers as their brains are forming. Isn't that correct? I'm going to be wrong again.
It can be, but this is a hotly debated topic. And, there is some research that indicates yes, but we need more research in that area. And I'm actually trying to think of the name of the research center that is doing a lot of pioneering work in this area. It's Dr. Stacy Gruber's laboratory associated, I believe, with McLean Hospital. She's at Harvard. And, I have great respect for Stacy, and certainly kids who are using cannabis at like pre-15, they really shouldn't be using cannabis. But kids who are using cannabis after, that is a gray area. And I have
Yes.
a lot of colleagues that would argue that it is not the huge risk that it has been made out to be. And a lot of the early work in that area was not distinctively about cannabis. It included research subjects who were using other substances. And so that, it remains a question mark. Certainly if, I happen to have a 16-year-old nephew, and I'm quite sure that he and many of his friends are curious about cannabis. And while I would strongly encourage all of them to wait as long as they could, I would also much prefer that they utilize cannabis than drink alcohol.
Then
or
alcohol,
any
yes.
other substance or smoke cigarettes.
Right. It really is interesting how our society has embraced and celebrated alcohol, and yet we do have this Schedule I drug still, cannabis. And hopefully that will change. Would you like to, we're coming near the end here. Anything else you would like to add?
Somebody has a question.
Oh, who has a question? Let's see. Is that Marion again?
No,
Or Nick?
Karen,
Nick?
Karen.
Sharon, go ahead.
I have a question, Nisha. I use a topical CBD. I am in Austin, Texas. And I have been suffering from lower back pain from degenerative disc and bulging and spondylolisthesis, and been seeing a chiropractor, and just today had my first acupuncture treatment.
Good for you.
They sell at this wellness center that I go to a topical which has a cooling effect to it. It seems to help when I put it on, but what do you think about topical CBDs, and should I be ingesting CBD instead of using a topical? I'm taking 2 Aleve in the morning and usually 2 Aleve at night. I want to get off of this.
How's
This
your
Aleve.
stomach? Yeah. So excellent question. Again, something that is sort of a hotly debated topic. There are a lot of people, and I've been one of them, that swear by certain cannabis-based topicals. I actually have one that's locally made that has a wide variety of cannabinoids and terpenes in it. And I think that stuff is magic. It's great for diaper rash. It's great for cuts, burns, bruises, you name it. And I don't know if you've ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where they put Windex on everything. Well,
Yes.
our family joke is, well, did you put some salve on it? Because it really, truly works on everything. But the truth is that the science doesn't really support topicals absorbing too far into the skin. So I don't really know, is it the placebo effect? If it is, keep using it. If you think it's working, great. I do believe that you would probably be better served by ingesting a tincture, gummy, something, because you happen to have so much inflammation and bone degeneration. And so I would encourage you, if you can find it, to think about CBD and CBG. And if you are open to THC, it will probably work even better for you.
Okay. And again, I am in Texas, so I don't
buy THC here in Texas.
Okay.
Legally.
So CBD, CBG with THC included.
There's a
Tiny
place
amount.
on Lamar near the Whole Foods. That's a
Oh, okay.
really
I'm right.
nice
I'm right
little
around
shop.
the corner from that.
Yeah, there's a really nice little shop there near 24-hour diner. It's like within a block of that. Really
Okay.
nice little shop. But I don't know, Nishi might know some other shops that I don't know about.
I like a company called Zondo. They happen to have a really nice organic Delta 9 gummy. Endo.
Endozondo.
That's online.
Zondo. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna write that
Endozondo.
down.
Fabulous.
Yep. And then I also want to put a plug in for my friends at healer.com. That line of products is developed by Dr. Dustin Sulak. I think they're in the Maine, in the Northeast. And you can buy a wide variety of super high quality products there, and they'll ship them to you. And they
Okay.
happen to have a lot of products that just, they have a variety of cannabinoids that aren't readily available here. So they've got CBG, CBDA, which is the acid form of the cannabinoid.
Okay, I just put them in the chat, endozondo
Oh.
and healer.com.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Nishi. Really appreciate your time today. So educational.
thanks.
Everybody, put this book on your shelf because it will answer all your questions. Oh, I'm not pointing right. It will answer all your questions. So interesting. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thank you,
Thank
Nishi.
you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.